You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Matt Reynolds. I'm here in my hotel room, as is my life these days. Joined by Nikki Sims and Andrew Jackson. You guys know both of them. Nikki is on the podcast pretty much every week. And we're here to talk today about, well, we're throwing the gauntlet down. Let's just be honest. We're going to throw some gauntlets today.
Okay.
But probably not the way you think we're going to, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about online coaching versus in-person coaching. And rather than coming from the perspective of, let me tell you where you're wrong, we want to tell you where we were wrong. So for years, we have said that in-person coaching is always better than online coaching. But the reality is that after 6 years, we've noticed that it isn't always better. And that in fact, online coaching is probably better for most people. And I get it. People are listening. They're like, yeah, you own the online coaching company. Of course, you're going to say that. But I've also been an in-person coach for over 20 years. And so I want to talk a little bit about why we believe that is true. Certainly, let me be clear. I am not lumping big box personal training, which I would absolutely like to actually have war against, with in-person professional coaching. Those are two different things, right? And so we've been in-person professional coaches for years. We've been online coaches for years. And we've had this conversation as a staff for a long time now. And so I'm going to start with Andrew. As we start to think about, and we've compared, I guess one of the things we've done even from a business perspective is we were kind of, in the beginning, I would say, at least if I were being vulnerable and honest, we were sort of chasing in-person coaching. Like, how can we provide as much value or as much as we can in an online coaching environment as we do in person? So as time has gone on, why has our opinion sort of shifted to the online coaching being maybe better for most people, even though we're not really, like, we're going to use the clickbaity title, we don't really think in-person coaching is wrong or bad, and we all still do it. I still do it. Why has some of that stuff started to change?
Yeah, it's hard to even remember back to 6 years ago and how different the coaching and fitness industry has changed, especially now that we're on the other side for the most part of COVID and online coaching is ubiquitous. 6 years ago, we were almost apologetically offering online coaching. Like, man, it as a last resort, hire us as an online coach. But please, if you can find an in-person coach, absolutely do that first, then come call us if you can't. And the thing that's shifted the most for me is a combination of three things that is really comes down to my perspective change. So if you disagree with this or have a different personal experience, that's completely fine. But I have certainly changed to come to value online coaching more so than in person, because I think that I can add more value to my clients' experience over a longer period of time, and therefore get the client better results. My job as a strength coach is to help my client get stronger, to help improve their quality of life.
Yeah.
And strength, as we talk about all the time, is the long-term investment. The famous analogy, the 401k of fitness. And getting stronger and staying strong and adapting to all of the changes that happen in life takes effort over a long period of time. And as an in-person coach, I could not have the clients that I've been able to maintain online, nor provide the results to those clients, that some of which I've had for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I've moved, they've moved, COVID happened, we've changed jobs, they get hurt, their schedule is changing on a day-to-day basis, and yet I can continue to show up within 24 hours, 7 days a week, and be there for that client and support them to reach their goals.
Yeah, agreed. Nikki, what are your thoughts there? You watched us walk through this entire gamut of, you and I in-person coached for many years together before we started online coaching. and now you've sort of seen that entire shift. Where do you sit on this?
Well, a couple different perspectives. I have my own perspective as being a coach and then perspective of being a client. And as a coach, it's just such a better life. I do not want to do in-person coaching anymore. I'll be honest. In fact, I just turned down someone who's going to pay me a couple grand a month to drive. I mean, arguably it was to drive up to LA, which I think you'd have to pay me a lot more to drive to LA. But like the lifestyle that it allows you to do, allows you to have is so much more flexible and adaptable. Like you can have so much more control over your schedule, which allows me to show up so much better for my clients when I'm trying to cram in, 8 sessions a day and, getting hangry and, just being in a bad mood for whatever reason and, missing out on my weekends and getting resentful. Like there are so many fewer opportunities for me to get resentful for my schedule. And I get to, live where I want, which was very important to me. I get to connect with more people than I ever could connect with in person. Like I have so many wonderful people on my roster that I would never get to work with because I can't live in all those Midwest cities, nor do I want to. I'm just kidding.
No, I do. It's okay.
And it's just so much more dollars per hour. Now, I
Yeah.
mean, that's important. Like
By the way,
I don't
it
need to
works
make a
for
shitload of
both.
money, but I want to be comfortable.
Well, and you're
And yeah, it
also
works for
you're
the
also a
client too.
client. You're also a
Yeah.
client. So
Yeah. And on the client side, just really quick, um, I get to work with the exact coach who I want to work with.
mm,
And if I just had my pick here, while there are probably some great coaches, I get the person who I want to coach me, who I want to connect with like 4 times a week and who I want thinking about my programming. And if I only had the pick of people here in my city, it would be a loss.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think as I started to think about this stuff, and especially people that listen to the podcast a lot will know that we've started to shift a little bit to the who's kind of listening, what the demographic is. We've talked a lot, even from the beginning of the podcast, for that beginning lifter, and we've started to talk more and more to the barbell enthusiast, to the up and coming coach. I think this is a really important episode that we talk to kind of the entire gamut of that audience, of from the absolute beginning lifter to the professional coach. And I think many of the arguments can be made work both ways. So you guys already mentioned the flexibility issue. So to me, one of the primary values of online coaching over in-person coaching is the flexibility to either A, train as a client where I want, when I want, anytime I want, with the equipment that I have available to me. And that is not the case if I have to do that in person at a specific location. And as a coach, oh my gosh, especially as now a business owner, somebody who travels all the time. I'm not at home right now. I'm in a hotel, and yet I broke down videos just about a half an hour ago of my clients. I broke down my wife's videos, who I would have trained with this morning, but she went ahead and uploaded videos to me, and she was like, "That was so cool that I got to see like what you do, right? Like it was cool."
Hmm.
And
Oh,
so,
that's cute.
for me, the flexibility to be able to coach as a coach in Springfield, Missouri, coaching clients all over the world, and not just in Springfield, Missouri, but also when I travel to these cities, when I'm doing seminars, when I'm on vacation, I actually still really enjoy coaching, and I typically coach
Hmm.
even on vacation. So all of those times would be missed sessions with clients if I coach them in person. And so for both the client, the flexibility, I can't tell you, we were talking about this before the show started. Every single day, I have at least a couple of my clients that say like, "Oh man, life just got in the way today. I know I have this workout scheduled on Tuesday. Coach, is it okay if I push it back to Wednesday?" Yes, of course it is. But what was the answer when I ran Strong Gym and I was there in person? The answer was, "Sorry, you're out the $60 for the session and you didn't get any coaching
Yeah, or you would reschedule to another time that may not have worked for you. Your
or
schedule
work
is
for
just
them,"
like jerked
or they get a
around.
substitute coach who isn't their
Yeah.
coach. Or so that flexibility, that piece to be able to coach anywhere you want, anytime you want, right? As long as you've got internet access in hotels, at your house, you can live wherever. We've seen a lot of our coaches move from like very expensive real estate areas to less expensive real estate areas, or somebody like you who did the opposite, but moved to Orange County because you just like love the beach and you're like, I want to live there, but you get to keep coaching your clients. But we've also watched the clients be able to do that, where the clients can now like, man, I'm not stuck with whatever coaches are available in my town or in my city. And maybe you live in New York City or Atlanta or Dallas, and you've got a handful of great coaches. You still have to connect with their schedule. You've got to connect with their price point, which I'll get to next. You've got to like all of those things still make it more complicated. And if online coaching is done right, you actually get your pick of any professional coach in the world that you want
Who you
to
connect
be
with
able
the best.
that you can connect with. That's exactly right. And so the flexibility to me is the first real like I started to see that. I never even thought about it. I mean, honestly, I didn't when we launched the business. I wasn't like, how big of a deal is this? And you start to realize, well, the last thing I want to talk about, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, is effectiveness. Is well, and so we'll get there. But the reality is that I can coach you in all of your sessions online,
Yeah.
and you have an opportunity to do all of your sessions online. If your plan is to do 3 sessions a week or 4 sessions a week, you can almost always get those done. You might have not been able to get them done at 9 a.m. on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, like you were supposed to if you're going to come and see me in the gym. But having the flexibility to go, man, it just didn't work out at 9 a.m. this morning. I had to do it after work today at 5:30 p.m., but I still got it done. Boom, perfect. So I actually think the flexibility piece has a direct impact on the effectiveness piece. Make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, because as I started out saying, that effective strength training is going to take consistency over a long period of time. And probably more so even than the exact X's and O's of the program.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're able to adapt and be flexible as a coach and vice versa the client, it's going to be more effective. And I would say that's the second major thing that's changed for me, and it sort of tees into the effectiveness conversation if you're ready to move on to that piece.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's the most complicated piece. I think, but yeah, I think it's really important to talk about. It's super important.
So number 2 that has changed for me is the relative importance of that in-person session, particularly the first session or maybe the first 1 to 3 months of training. I used to place a very high priority on the value of that for the client. I thought that was crucial and important, and we had to get the most possible strength that we could in a really short period of time and fix, quote unquote, all these technical issues so that they were proficient at the lifts. And the argument against online coaching was you just couldn't do it. You couldn't do it as fast. You couldn't do it as effectively. You couldn't change their movement pattern in real time. It was always delayed, and it would be slow. And I, first off, don't place as much value on that first period of training. I place a much higher value on what we were just talking about, that consistency over a long period of time. And I also don't think that even the in-person coaching that you can get, I think that you can make a counter argument that it's even any more effective or efficient. Yes, you can change things rep to rep in real time.
Yes.
But I think I have more lasting and effective change for the client's lifting patterns with the equivalent amount of time online.
Right.
So let me break that down more specifically.
Yeah, I was going to say, so go into that. So what's an average session
So you take an average in-person first session is an hour and a half, 90 minutes. At least that's what I used to do. Like somebody who did a drop in or a first time, or I've never lifted before, they'd come in and spend an hour and a half with me. There would usually be the 15 minutes beforehand, or I got there early. I had to drive there, which in the Seattle area could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on where I was coming from.
Put the polo on, look good.
Still doing that.
Put the pomade in the hair.
You know, then you got the cleanup afterwards. You know, the interaction post session. Maybe you go out to dinner, whatever they're doing. You know, whatever
Which
the
is not
situation
all bad
is.
from a community perspective.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. Like there is an advantage. I do like to hang out with real people.
Sure,
I think you guys do too.
It's a concentrated period of time. Absolutely.
That's exactly right. And sometimes the people I like to hang out with happen to end up being my clients.
Sure.
But the reality is that at the absolute minimum, 90 minutes is how long it takes for that first session. And I would argue that that's even ridiculous because You take the shower, you put the polo on, you fix the hair,
Commute,
you do the
da
commute,
da
you
da.
do the thing.
Yeah.
You show up 15 minutes early because that's what you do when you're a professional. You stay
Right.
15 minutes late. You shake
Right.
the hands of the spouse. Like, so
You
it's
talk about the
really,
schedule.
that's right.
Even
It's
yeah.
communicating
to
about
2.5
schedule can
hours,
be,
right? Now,
yeah.
how long
Emails.
does a session take you now? And I know it took longer in the first days of
Yep.
Barbell Logic online coaching, but how long now does that entire first session take you to coach your client?
I average 3 to 5 minute video per workout
Right.
with my clients. And that is total setup time, recording, uploading the video, changing the program in real time,
Yeah.
and moving on to the next client.
Yeah. You
And it's
actually
not
show
because I'm
them.
rushing. I want
Right.
to make sure I'm clear.
Yeah.
I'm chilling. I'm
Right.
sipping coffee. I'm efficient and effective in my workflow, but it's not because I'm going, I'm talking a million miles an
Right.
hour and moving as fast as I humanly could. I'm providing all of my coaching feedback as if I were talking to you right now.
That's right.
And in fact, I think a couple of my clients have told me they'll often put the video up on the TV, like the family gathers around. I don't want to like brag or anything, but
Like, check this out.
it's, they're watching the YouTube videos.
But
And
we talk to them like we're talking to them
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we're talking to them.
the real
Like,
world
it's not
feedback I
even a
get.
like thing for me. I'm drinking coffee. I'm
Totally.
having a conversation with somebody. As a matter of fact, I've joked about this before on the podcast. Sometimes I'm like, no. Sit back a little bit more on rep 4. And then
Yeah,
they don't do
yeah.
it. I'm like, you're not listening to me. But it's really, I'm just breaking down
Yeah,
their video from the day after.
The
So
actual feedback I get is
I'm
that
talking to them.
people will often talk back to me.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like their
Absolutely.
spouse will be like, "Who are you talking to?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, it's Andrew." And
It's
they're like,
coach.
"What is wrong with
Isn't
you?"
this isn't this asynchronous? Right.
So,
So
anyways,
if it takes 3 to 5
3 to
minutes
5
to break
minutes.
down a
Yeah.
video,
Right.
and
So-
that initial session took 90 minutes to 2 hours,
Exactly.
how many sessions can you coach in a 90-minute to 2-hour period online where you're given
Right.
real legitimate feedback, focusing on the cues that they can remember for the next session?
Right.
You get to show them visually what you see, which I think is something that you never get to do in person, right? They're trying to feel what it feels like. Weight's heavy on their back. You're yelling at them. The octave is like of the music is lower. They can't hardly hear anything. And I think there's some real value in being like, we do these screen recordings and they get to see what Coach Andrew that Coach Andrew's watching me lift, and I get to see what he sees. And then
Mhm.
he stops the screen for a second, like, look where your knees are here. Look at where your back is here. And you're like, oh, I would have never been able to see that
Right.
in an in-person session.
And I think that it's also important to say right now how we weren't really able to do this, or maybe not able, but just not doing this when we first started online coaching.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
6 years down the road,
Right.
we look a hell of a lot different. Like
Yeah.
there are so many, I mean, we're developing our own software to make better coaching come through to the clients.
That's right.
That's
So
a great point.
We've intentionally gotten to the point because we care about online coaching, obviously, and we want it to be really freaking good.
Yeah.
And so the work that you all do, that the whole team does to make sure we're striving for value for the coach and the client, which means we're trying to help the coaches do the best job they can, which means delivering value. Like that, when we talk to our team, that is the currency that is important to them.
Yeah.
Like how much can they give to their clients?
Yeah.
Right. And that has to be emphasized, that change over the last 6 years, because I couldn't have made that statement 6 years ago when I was only typing text feedback.
Yeah. Which is
When
how
I
we
was
started.
using a different software platform that didn't have all the tools, when I didn't have my workflow optimized from 6 years of continuously looking for ways to add more value in less time. Those things have all evolved. So getting back to that math problem. So what's 90 minutes of online coaching when you have 3 to 5 minutes of interaction? How many workouts is that? You're talking somewhere between 2 and 3 months
That's right.
of time where the client is, and this goes back to your effectiveness cue, is having to solve their own movement problems with me as a coach providing
Facilitator.
feedback.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think it's more effective. And I think, Nikki, you've mentioned this before, the changes seem more lasting because rather than them hearing my cue in the moment that they don't truly understand, and sometimes those cues can be like major overcorrections that cause problems later.
That's
If
true.
they
They'll
just keep,
take that overcorrection with them back to their
Yep.
if
home
you
gym.
cue
Yep.
sit
They'll be
back,
like,
sit back, sit
but he told me
back,
to sit back. And then all of a sudden they're on their heels and they're
that's right.
folding in half. Yeah.
But if you're there to course correct and update the cues or provide different, what I find is that more of my cues become external cues. We've talked about it. We've got a whole podcast episode, internal versus external cues. And I think as an online coach, you tend to have to lean more heavily on the external cues, which force the client to solve movement problems based on what they can feel during the lift,
That's right.
or
Sure.
based on what they see, like Matt talked about. The amount of information that you can communicate visually and audibly in your feedback videos is just exponentially more than when it was only written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tactile cues obviously become more difficult online,
Sure.
right? It's not that we don't use them. We don't still use like a tubo or certain things that you could do for
Sure.
some amount of tactile cues, but it obviously becomes more difficult. But the visual cues, there just really aren't. We very rarely use visual cues in in-person coaching. You can use them, and we've used them before, but like they're not used very often. And in online coaching, visual cues are really, really key. And then when you pair that with the verbal or heard cue, so that they can make the connection that what my coach is telling me is this, and I can see how that connects. I think the light bulb comes on much more often than when you're trying to just sort of yell at someone with a barbell on their back who's just trying to finish the set and not die. And they're trying, and so you're telling them these cues that literally might fix them a little bit from rep 3 to rep 4, rep 4 to rep 5. But did they remember those cues for the next squat workout? And how many times have you had your clients, like I have my clients, they'll print my cues out. They'll watch the video from the workout before because it's only 3 to 5 minutes. So they can take 3 to 5 minutes in their warm-up sets of their next squat workout and remember, oh, Coach Reynolds told me to say, or told me to do this on Wednesday's workout. Now it's Friday's workout, so they can apply it. That's actually, I think, a lot more difficult in an in-person setting.
Another thing that I think you're able to do really well is show the client their programming and be really adaptable to their programming right there. I remember being a coach, it was challenging to do that because we would have the session, or being a coach in person was challenging because we would have the session and then I would have to remember things that I would have to go back home and rewrite their programming and hopefully remember it. And that was another chunk of time that I was spending on that time, on that chunk of the client hour. So
Yes.
now we're able to show the client their programming, make it very adaptable, make changes in the moment, and let the client see, like literally see on the screen because we're showing them both at the same time
Yeah.
where they're going.
Yeah. So explain that a little bit more, Andrew. What
Yeah.
Andrew does is Andrew will literally break down his client video like on the left of the screen and have programming on the right of the screen so they can see their program and their lift at the same time. And then so if they struggle with a lift or something changes about a lift, you immediately, as you're breaking down their video, you'll say, oh, so what I'm going to do now for the next time you do this lift is I'm going to go ahead and make these tweaks. So it actually gives them a better insight, I think, as well, not just into what you're trying to fix from a technique perspective, but it gives them a better overview of their programming perspective. They kind of always know where you're going.
Yeah.
Yes, that I'd say that's probably the thing that's most impactfully changed the amount of value that I can add to my clients training right now. That I can remember 3, 4, 5 years ago, we would often get in our NPS feedback, net promoter score, or basically our customer feedback. We'd frequently hear, man, I wish I could understand more what my coach was doing with my program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Big
I can
picture.
remember thinking, oh my gosh, like programming is already this kind of slog that I used to do on Sundays that I would save till the end of the week and do everybody's programming over like an extra 2-3 hour session. And it kind of had that old feeling you were talking about, Nikki, of just like being hangry and exhausted. I can just remember many frustrated late Sunday nights. and I just didn't have the time or the capacity to explain what I was doing. I was just trying to get through it as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Now I'm simultaneously coaching the movement and watching predominantly the bar speed and some of the other feedback that I collect from the client on a session by session basis, and then talking probably most of the video about what I'm doing with their program, why I'm doing it, and where we're going as a team,
Yeah.
basically. So that's another one of those shifts in terms of what I perceive as my value as a coach. Is I have way more emphasis, I think, and way more value added on talking about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and where we're going.
Yeah.
And they get to be part of that conversation too. There's way more interaction about what was that session like? What do you think? Here's options that I think we could do.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
You know, you're working with somebody for 3, 4, 5 years.
Like, I'm
There's
thinking about
much
doing
of
They
this
get to
or
have
part of the
this.
coach.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
they have a better feel. Like that's one of the things I think I've changed the most to overcome one of the disadvantages of online coaching is that it's harder to make those real-time adjustments based on how they're feeling on the day. And a lot of people revert to RPE, and I've occasionally used RPE, but I actually prefer to give them more like bumper lanes. You know,
Yeah.
here's kind of like this is what I'm looking for from the session. Here's what I think you could do, and here's the parameters that I want to give you some
There it
wiggle
is.
room on.
What is
Yeah.
that? What is
And
this right here?
This is the wiggle
Only
room.
for the video. Only for the video watchers. Check it out on
You
YouTube.
knew I was going to do it.
I
did.
knew
No,
he was
you
gonna do
don't.
Oh well. Yeah, so
So-
give them the parameters and they get to have some ownership
That's right.
of
Yeah.
what it's like. Because sometimes you show up in the gym and you're like, this is the day.
Yep.
Like I'm going to put
Yep.
the hammer down and
Yep.
I've got the extra juice to really
Yes.
grind for that rep. And then other days you're just like, I just want to get through this one. And
Well,
if
and
you
when you don't give them the bumpers, in my early days, I would have a lot of clients in online coaching. If they were just having a really bad day, they missed
Yep.
their, it's a 3 sets of 5, and they hit their first set and it was a set of 4. They were just
Mhm.
like, I just didn't know what to do, so I just like didn't press the rest of the workout. And I'm
Right,
like, whoa.
right.
So now I have time to be able to walk through this and tell them like, here's the audible plan. If you
Right.
walk in like you had terrible sleep last night, you do the thing. All of my clients know what the audible is. Like for those audible is like, right? It's like what a quarterback
Making
does
audible, yeah.
when he looks at the defense in football and he's like, oh the play that we've called is not going to work. He calls an audible, which is like, I'm going to do a completely different play. And so I give my clients, it's not the same. It's different for different clients. It's different based
Yep.
on like whether they've got injuries or whatever. Everything is personalized, but they know like if you go in and this thing happens, here's the contingency plan. It's a contingency plan is what it is.
Sure.
So that they still are able to get good work in. They walk out of the gym feeling better than they did walking in. You can do all those things. Now, that is there for in-person coaching. So I don't think that's necessarily an advantage that online coaching has over in-person. I think it's a thing that it was a hurdle we had to
Well-
overcome. Yeah, would you
I was
disagree?
gonna say you can help them make better audibles online because you have so much information in front of you right
that's
there
true.
on your
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
Like when
How about giving them the freedom and the ability to make the choice on their own,
right,
Right.
which
yeah,
they wouldn't do if you're in person. You just be like, you know
Yeah,
what?
you just have to
Take
teach
10
them.
pounds off the bar and do it again.
Exactly.
But they actually
yeah.
have to learn how to make some of those choices. They become free thinkers about this stuff, which
Right.
I think is really
Yeah.
valuable.
And because you're having a conversation they speak to you via
And
their check-ins and
asynchronous.
lifts, and then
Yeah.
you speak to them the check-ins.
an
But it does
asynchronous-
become, you're having 2, 3, 4, 5 touch points a week.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of
Yes.
connection time. And
That's right,
so
right.
you do get to guide them on how to make those decisions, and you can teach them what you are incorporating into those decisions because you can show them on their dashboard, and because you get to connect with them 5 times a week, your library of that person is huge.
That's right.
Versus if you're
That's
just
right.
seeing that one person once a week, like you don't have as much in your history with them to make the best call.
That's right. One of my favorite things, Andrew, that you've done with the software, Andrew's the product manager for the software that is now our software, is a third-party software, is that we come back to that kind of idea that things that we do in business of like the game plan, the goals, actions, metrics, is that the software that we use automatically tracks all the metrics.
Mhm.
And it tracks them so much better than I was ever able to do in person.
Yep.
So we would track 1 rep maxes, and maybe we would track 3 rep maxes or whatever. But the software tracks everything. So
Everything.
your best 5 sets of 4. And there's times where I'm like, wow, that was a 5 set of 4 PR. If that's somebody I've coached for 3 or 4 years, that's
That's
actually a
cool.
big deal. It's actually a big
Yes.
deal, right? And so
Yep.
so no matter what the set and rep scheme is, no matter what the exercise is, no matter what the chin ups, body weight movements, and if they log how much they weigh, it'll like even track that. Like, oh, you did 30 total reps today on chin ups, but your weight was 2 pounds. If it was, I've got several guys that are underweight right now. So I'm trying to explain to them as their chin ups, if they stay the same, but they keep adding a couple pounds of body weight, like they're actually getting stronger because they're doing more chin up weight. And so,
Right.
or vice versa, whatever. So I love the fact that when you come again back to the effectiveness piece, that you're able to see that like it's not that the metrics or the PRs themselves is the effectiveness piece. It's that it shows that it's effective. And so it does
Right.
such a better job for us of being like, wow, we can track tonnage, we can track anything can be tracked. You can track conditioning metrics now. I mean, any of those things can be tracked. And that's there that was even always a pain for me in the early days. I converted years ago away from the handwritten notebooks, but I still have 10 or 12 of those of the early days of the handwritten notebooks. And I remember what a pain in the butt it was to track all my PRs. Not just the 1 rep max, but like literally every PR. It was a pain in the butt to do it in the software as well, but we figured out how to do it, and now it's really cool because the very first thing the software tells both the coach and the client when the workout is complete is congratulations, here's all the PRs you set today.
Yeah, it's been I would say that's probably the second biggest change that's happened for me. I mentioned earlier it's programming in real time in parallel with the feedback. And I'd say the second biggest is, and it's a little bit specific to us at Barbell Logic, that we have all of those metrics available, but that has completely changed the way I program.
It's huge.
And some of it is, I guess you could call it maybe a placebo or just the psychology of lifting, that going back to the initial conversation we were having, the value of consistency over a long period of time is often a matter of finding the thing that's going to keep the client engaged and motivated to continue training, and being able to see the metrics and also show our client the metrics visually in real time is, I think, very helpful for them to be able to see that even though it might be a different exercise with a different rep scheme, that they're progressing on something, or they feel like they're progressing on something. And in that sensation of progressing on something causes them to actually progress on
That's right.
everything.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
it's a bit of a gamification of things, but
it is.
oftentimes people will say it's all arbitrary or it doesn't matter, but it does matter if it changes the behavior of the client in a way that they then reach their goals.
Yeah, totally.
So that can't be emphasized enough. Now, there's lots of other, if we just want to talk about online coaching generically, I think that's true for almost any software that you use, that you can add more metrics into the conversation in real time. Certainly at Barbell Logic, I think we've taken that to the next level in being able to see just and pull down in real time. Again, if with the calendar up, I can pull down the matrix of PRs and talk to them and be like, oh, hey, check this out. We're close to this PR over here. What do you think about shooting for that one in the next month?
Yeah, that's
And
actually
they're like,
right.
yes, they're bought into now aiming for something, and it drives their behavior.
It's a piece of information you would have never seen. And then on top of that, you've got all this other information that we utilize that are both client centered and coach centered. We can see compliance of the clients, right? Which is something that
Yes.
you don't tend to keep and I'm sure some coaches are really pedantic about this. They keep their compliance for the in-person clients, but it's just automated. I can see what the compliance is at 7 days, 30, at 90, at lifetime. Actually, at any interval, I can see that by my clients. And so that tells me red flags when I have a client that is traditionally 90, 92, 93% compliant, and all of a sudden they drop to 72%. That's like a major
Right.
red flag. Something's going on in
Right.
their life. They've had a 20% drop in compliance. And so I think that helps reduce the churn. That number means like
Yes.
what percentage of clients you lose every month. And again, I remember because of the cost, because of all these things that we talked about, the flexibility, the cost, those things early on in this podcast, I always felt like I was bringing a good value to my clients at Strong Gym, but the reality is, or when I was coaching in person a ton, but the reality is that the churn that I had for those clients was actually way higher than it is for online coaching.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes back to the actual numerical value of the thing that we're able to provide. And so, I think, oops, hang on a second, eject our video. Part of that is, I think, one of the big advantages of what we're trying to do from a client and coach perspective is that the the our coaches have the ability to make 300 to 500% increase in pay per hour for their clients, while only charging the client 25 to 33% of what their standard in-person coaching costs. So the client pays one fourth, let's say one third, and the coach gets paid 3x or 4x. And so the value is actually, as far as from the normal bell curve of in-person coaching, it's the same value for both. The coach gets paid significant more money per hour. The client pays significantly less money for the coaching. And then we've already walked through with the additional value propositions of like tremendous flexibility in being able to train or coach when you want, where you want, anytime you want, and in the improvement in effectiveness of coaching, which again, I think what we're arguing here is, can we make a more of a difference in a person's lift in a single session, in person? Yeah. But over the
Sure.
course of 60 minutes of coaching, I think we can actually make a lot more difference in online coaching. And then when you start throwing in all the other life events and the vacations, like think about how many times your client goes on vacation, when your
Mhm.
client's in a hotel, when your client's in Cancun, and
I kept coaching.
I get to
Yeah.
keep, I get to coach them when they're on vacation. I get to
I
coach
had
them when I'm on vacation.
I had a
Yeah, it's so
client
rad.
earlier this year who got an Airbnb on an island for 6 weeks. Which is
I'm
now you're starting to see
jealous of
more and
that
more
guy.
of this. I was super jealous. He would send me pictures and videos
I
with
was
the
super
ocean in the
jealous.
background, and but I would have never been able to continue coaching that person, and
No.
he
Right.
probably wouldn't have continued to train. This is the other thing that I've shifted in my philosophy. It used to be like, well, if you don't have access to a barbell and a black iron gym, just take the time off. We'll pick up
Right.
when we get back.
Right.
Wrong.
No, he went out.
Habit
He and his wife
based.
are both clients of mine. They went out and bought sand fillable bags you could like make kettlebells out of bags. They
Yep.
packed that on
That's
their
awesome.
That is
luggage
awesome.
and took it out there. And so I came up with all these kettlebell. They took kettlebell and TRX, and
Yeah.
we came up with a combination of that and body weight lifts. They kept training and picked right back up when we came back with minimal loss. I mean, this has just
Right.
been, I think,
With way
like,
less detraining when they
right,
got back under the barbell than had they done nothing for 6
almost
weeks.
back up into PRs. And I'm finding that so much more now that my clients pick back up as if nothing happened,
Yeah.
with pretty significant layoffs. Certainly
Yeah.
something we learned after COVID.
Yep. That's the
And
COVID
that whole
effect.
process. Yep.
Yeah, your clients that trained over COVID in their living room with whatever they had were able to go back to the barbell with way less detraining and get right back to where they were much faster than the ones that were just like, I don't know, there's
Yep.
COVID for 2 years. Of course, most people didn't know it was coming for 2 years. So they thought, I'll take a couple weeks off, it'll be fine. And when they ended up, the next thing you knew, they blinked. It was 18 months had gone by and like massive detraining has occurred. And
Yep.
so that idea of habit-based training where we train no matter what, that doesn't mean that it's always got to be optimal. It doesn't mean we're always going to get to squat and deadlift, but it means that we do the best we can to train and develop those habits. One, like it keeps them training. Two, it keeps up your relationship, the accountability,
Yes.
which is a huge piece of this, right?
Yep.
What is your relationship like? I think again back to when I coached in person a ton. What was my relationship like with my clients when they, college kids that would go home for the summer and I wouldn't see them for 12 weeks?
Yep.
What kind of relationship did I have with them after 12 weeks? None. It's like you'd have to completely resell them, and most of the time they wouldn't come
Right.
back. And so, again, it's better for everybody.
That
Yeah.
churn and compliance conversation is really interesting to me, because I'm curious, how many in-person clients did you coach for over 6 years?
I've never coached a client. Sybil is the only client I've ever coached. My 87-year-old lady for over 6 years, but I didn't coach her during COVID. So I don't know that you can
Right.
count it, right? So I coached her all the way to COVID. During COVID, basically didn't coach her for 2 years. And now I've been coaching her consistently again for another 6 months or so, but I don't think I've ever coached anybody for 6 years in person over the long span because people's lives change, they move, like you said, all those things. As a matter
Yep.
of fact, we have a client who moved away from Strong Gym in Springfield, lives in Little Rock, Arkansas, and has been a block client since the day we launched and is one of our BL1K clients and has now
Yeah.
been there because and there's no way that that guy was obviously not going to be able to get coaching in Strong Gym in Springfield, Missouri when he moved to Little Rock. And so that's again one of those. I've never. What about you guys? You guys ever coached anybody for 6 or 7 years straight in person?
I don't think so since I've moved around so much. The only I've I have two clients who I coached in Atlanta who are now some of my longest time block clients
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
they were my in-person clients when I was in
That's
Atlanta.
right.
So
That's right.
I think they're probably coming up on 6 years,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but not in person.
And now there might be some people out there listening. Well, I've been going to this gym for 6 years, and at an individual level, there's going to be cases where that's awesome. I
Which is
mean,
yeah, it's great.
we were talking about it earlier. Like if I could drive to the strength parlor in like 10 minutes
Yeah.
or Next Level Barbell, I'd probably be training
Or
there.
Sully's gym or somebody else. Like, man, listen.
Yeah.
Yes, I still. All of this argument is actually like there are those perfect scenarios where you have these
Yeah.
incredible coaches who are close, who do
Yep.
fit your schedule, who do fit your budget. Yes, go to them.
But let's zoom out to the fitness industry
That's
at
right.
large.
That is
Or
such a
personal
tiny
training. Let's
percentage.
just zoom into personal training.
That's
A
right.
$12.9 billion industry that has over 300,000 personal trainers operating in that
Yep.
model, and millions of people paying rates that are per session more expensive than what it would cost to do
And you know,
online
and you know
coaching.
what the average payout for the personal trainer is?
They're making
Oh
like
my gosh.
18, 19 bucks an hour.
It's
It's
19 and
terrible.
change per
Mhm.
hour is what they're
Even
making.
one of my friends here in Southern California is only getting paid like $19 an
That
hour.
is
Yep.
crazy.
What?
Which leads to high trainer burnout. There's something like 80, the industry
Of course.
journals that I've read throw around something like 80% turnover of personal
Because
trainers, which
the gym is taking 60 to 70%
Right.
of the revenue.
go look at
It's
your local
brutal.
gym, especially the big box ones, which interestingly, there's no single company that owns a significant market share, which tells you that most personal training is probably boutique.
Hmm.
But you've got really high turnover within those big box gyms, not making a whole lot of money, that's providing most of the personal training service out to the world. And that's not who we're talking about that we would want you to go train with if
Right.
you're able to find somebody in person. We're talking, those are diamonds in the rough that are out there.
Right.
And I think online coaching in general could much better serve that $12.9 billion industry that's out there, and is expected to grow by like 39% over the next 10 years.
Right.
Significant growth. And,
Yep.
We've got a huge health problem with obesity in this country, that more and more people are looking for personal training. And I think online coaching is going to be a much better big picture solution to people that are looking for that kind of a service.
Yeah. So you have access to more professional coaches, all of the professional coaches essentially, as opposed to the ones that are just in your area. If you're a professional coach, it broadens your potential client pool by, a few billion.
Mhm.
So you can, the question is, how many clients can you coach in person at a max? Like at
I was
one
going to
time,
ask you that when you were running Strong Gym.
12 was the most I ever did like one-on-one. And then I did a boot camp on like Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning, which would have a handful of ladies in it or whatever.
Yeah.
And online, like if you do this online again, okay, so let's say you're doing 12 people, like you're basically working 8-9 hours a day. There's also what we don't
Right.
talk about. You talk about how much you're getting paid per hour, 19 per hour. That doesn't count the 3 dead hours or 4 dead
Right.
hours during the day
The
that you're just
bimodal
like, oh
distribution
man,
of
nobody's here at 11 a.m. Nobody's here at 1 p.m. So I'm stuck here all day long, right? And so now you can go from training 10 or 12 clients at $20 an hour, $25 an hour, or maybe if you're great, $50 an hour, to coaching 50 clients or 60 clients and making $50 an hour on your worst day and $150 an hour on good days. Like and have the flexibility to do it anywhere you want. To me, it's a no-brainer for both the client and the coach.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I currently have 32 clients, about a third of which are also nutrition clients, and I'm averaging around an hour and a half a day,
Right.
6 days a week, and
Right.
so I take most of the weekend off as well.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And I got to say that Andrew is almost annoyingly adamant about adding as much value as possible to
Yes.
the work that he's doing
Yeah,
at that
no,
time.
well, I haven't lost a client since August of 2021.
Yeah.
Well,
So I
it's
think
it's the
I just,
combination of Andrew's adamant about being more and more efficient at what he
yes.
does
Yeah.
while reducing service zero and actually
Yeah.
being more efficient and improving
I think I'm
service.
actually
Yeah.
adding more
I know you
value
are. You're
and
more
reducing the
value.
time.
It's more
Yeah.
value. It's lower churn. It's better. It's better effectiveness and so your rate of pay goes up tremendously.
Right.
The value for the client per minute of time or for
Yes.
the interactions they're getting, like that value is much better for them. They're paying less money for you. You're getting
Right.
paid more. And so the churn doesn't go away. You can move across the country. You can go on vacation. They can move across the country. They can go on vacation and they can continue to get coaching from you and you
Right.
develop that relationship. And then I think you're really, all three of us are really adamant about not just being robot coaches, that we spend a lot of time. And this is one of the things that also I think online coaching takes a bad rap for, as being just this thing that's sort of impersonal. And it's not that hard to develop a good relationship with your clients. Like if you actually
Right.
care, there's authenticity there, and you're asking them about like, how was the vacation? How are the wife and kids? And it's not just this like, oh, they're on vacation. So reminder
Well,
to ask how wife and kids are. It's
right.
like
Yeah.
that's not what it is. It's that you're making jokes with them and you get to know them, and like that's key.
Right. I talked about this last year at the block conference, the value-based model of professional coaching, which is the model I use when I'm thinking about how to optimize my value per unit time, which might sound a little bit robotic. I do have a bit of a math brain. So I've literally like drawn out graphs and thought about it from like an integral perspective. Like how do I, calculus, how do I optimize? How do I maximize this graph or this line? And the elements of my value equation are how can I demonstrate as much ability as a coach, technical ability, whether that's feedback, exercise selection, programming, integrity, which I perceive as my consistency, both in terms of how quickly I give my feedback and how consistent I am on the video. I've failed in the past and lost some clients because sometimes I'm a little bit too all over the place, from an energy level. And we've seen this with some of our coaches. Like if their moods are way up or way down or kind of erratic, then that can come across as an integrity concern. So that's sort of like the baseline being having high integrity, and then benevolence is the piece that you're talking about. That's the third major component, and that's the one that I think increases the most over time.
Yep.
In terms of its relative importance in that equation. My technical ability can come in and out as the circumstances change, particularly inflection points in somebody's life, whether it's their goals changing, their life changing, or their stress level changing. My experience and ability can kind of spike back up in importance. But the thing that keeps the client coming back is that relationship and my demonstrating that I care about their training and I care about them as a person. That's what I think keeps that relationship going over 6 years, like I have with some of my clients.
It's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Anything else, Nikki?
I was just gonna wrap it up on my end and say, like, that's what we're gonna keep working on trying to do is increase the value output. And I think that's happening with our program development that you're leading. I think that's happening with the podcast. I think that's happening with how much we can do with the client experience. And it's happening every single month. Our coaches get smarter.
That's right.
Like our coaches learn so much from year to year. I mean, think about how much each of you have increased your own value just because of how much you're able to learn from the quantity of clients you're able to work with.
Yeah.
So we are so curious about how to keep delivering that value. We've set the bar, I think, pretty damn high on online coaching. We see our same business model applied elsewhere.
Copy
And
pasted.
I
Yeah.
can't blame him.
That's right. Of course.
What looks like the same business model, but I think what
Mm.
you just highlighted there is something that you can't see, and it's underneath or behind the curtain, under the hood, whatever you
Yeah,
want
it
to
can be
call it.
claimed
But
on the billboards.
the
Right.
systems
Like we do the
that
things.
drive the change for the better,
Yeah.
over time, that's hard to replicate just from
Yeah.
looking at the outside.
Yeah,
To
the
compare what
proof is in
we
the
are doing
pudding.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're able to look at those NPS scores, or like the happiness scores of your clients, or the happiness scores of your coaches, the
Mhm.
churn rate of your clients, the longevity of your clients, the turnover rate of your coaches, the effectiveness of, like, to actually look at PRs and actual metrics and see how your clients are getting better, the dollar per hour that your coaches are making, the dollar per hour value that the clients are getting. Like, those are all stats that we match. And so other people could say, like, yeah, these are all things that are important to us, but we have 6 years behind us to be able to do it. And so that's not to say that there aren't other good online coaching companies or online coaches out
Let's
there.
not
There
say
are.
we're always
there,
perfect.
there are no, not only are we not perfect, and y'all get this sometimes when people have seen this. Like, Matt Reynolds is just what thinks he's so perfect. Just ask him. It's one of our podcast. That's one of that's one of the
That's
reviews
one
of
of
the
the
podcast. The
reviews.
reality is, man, no one is harder. No one is harder on this company than the three of us on this call.
It's
And we are
the
never. We
only
are
way you
so
can
damn.
continuously improve is if your default assumption is that you're not perfect.
That's right. Like, you have
It's
to constantly get better. And
right.
some of it is driven, let me be clear, like, some of it's driven by fear. I want to continue to do better, or somebody else is going to take over, and somebody else is going to do it better than us, and I don't want to do that. So this is my plea. First off, if you're getting great in-person coaching from a great in-person coach, stay with them. That's not this. The point of this conversation today was not to pull people away from great in-person coaching. But if you need a coach, man, I would, like, is beseech like an Old Testament word? Like, I would beseech you, I would plead with you
Mm.
to not go to a big box gym and hire some kid that doesn't know what they're doing, right? If you're the kid that doesn't know what they're doing, we've got an academy that's for you as well, right? You have an opportunity to come to Barbell Logic Online Coaching as a client, and your first month is 100% free, no matter what. We have coaching for as cheap as $155 a month. In-person coaching, even at those big box gyms, even at the cheap ones, are going to be at minimum double or triple that cost. And so you have nothing to lose. Come sign up for online coaching. Try it for the first month. There's no contracts. There's never any contracts. You can cancel anytime, and come give it a whirl, right? And see if we're full of shit. Like, maybe you get a coach and you're just like, man, evidently Nikki, Andrew, and Matt are a lot better than the other. I don't think that'll be the case. We work really hard on this.
But if it is, also let us know. We're happy
Then
to
let us
find you
know.
the right
That's
coach.
exactly right. So we love what we do. Man, it's awesome to be able to travel and get to do this for a job, to get to be an online coach no matter where you are in the world, in the United States. And I think it's the same thing, the same big value. We've all been clients. We all are clients of Barbell Logic as well. And to be able to also experience that as a client is really nice. To be able to go and be like, hey, coach, I'm not going to be in the gym today. I'm going to be in the hotel gym.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a quick video. Here's a quick picture of the hotel gym. And you can get the same thing done. It's all about that consistency. And we get the consistency long term. The churn goes down. The effectiveness goes up. We build those habit-based, and it becomes extremely sustainable. So love it. Love what we're doing. So thank you all for listening. Thank you guys. That was a great conversation. If this brought you value, definitely share it with somebody else. We'd always love a 5-star review anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify specifically. Again, remember that we are on video. You can see me in my sweet Miami. I got a little Miami short sleeve button up shirt
I
here
like
today.
the plane shape behind you is very
There's an airplane
consistent.
that's like
That
almost
is-
exactly the same shape as my head. Currently.
As a not former Boeing employee, I don't know whether that's a Boeing plane or not. Just wanna let's take an opportunity for that little inside joke there.
Yeah, that's right. So Andrew used
Never
to be
worked for Boeing.
Andrew used to be the CEO of Boeing. We took him away.
He also ran a nuclear power plant.
Also that. So I don't know, man. It all seems like the same to me. What's
that
different?
part's actually good.
So
Oh.
thanks for listening to the Barbell Logic podcast, and we'll catch you all next week.